Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. It's so good to be with you all. I know more folks will be joining us as we go. People need to come in and out. That is totally okay and deeply understandable. I wish we could start every meeting with Beyonce. That would suit me just fine. So thank you for listening to some good music with me and with Jessica as you settle in and get ready for our hour together. It is just amazing to me that you are all here, and I am so grateful for it. We have an hour together on a bright, sunny day here on Dakota land to learn and to ask questions and to explore. My name is Liz Loeb. I use she and her pronouns. I'm here on Dakota land in my home in Northeast Minneapolis. I live here with my spouse, Sarah, and our toddler, Lyra. Lyra, the toddler, is very happily at daycare right now, so I get to use my home office, which is delightful. And I am the Associate Director of Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light, also known as MNIPL. MNIPL works with communities of faith, conscience, and spiritual practice at the intersection of climate justice and racial justice. So we use community organizing and advocacy and policy work to reach towards the scale of systems change and transformation that we need for a world of interdependence and collective liberation. We are led primarily by Native and Indigenous folks and Black folks, and we follow the wisdom and brilliance of communities of color in responding to the climate crisis. We are going to do some introductions. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. Jessica will introduce herself. And we're going to spend some time at the beginning of this learning lab talking about where we've been, how we got here as a community, not in the biggest sense of that, but really a little bit of the history of the learning labs and what we're intending to do in this cycle of the learning lab. So we're going to give you some setup and a sense of the structure that will follow for the rest of this learning lab cycle over the next few months. So this beginning part of the learning lab is going to be recorded. We will stop the recording when we move into group conversation so that you feel like you can participate without thinking about being recorded. But we want this intro part offered by Jessica and me to be available to folks who missed the first session, so that when we come to the second session, we can dive in because we can ask folks to watch this intro. How does that sound as a beginning? Any immediate questions or needs? Beautiful, beautiful. Well, please use the chat. Please move your body if moving your body helps you be here. Please feel free to come off mute and ask a question. Jessica and I will facilitate as needed, but this is meant to be a space for you to bring what is meaningful for you and to bring bring your curiosity. So please don't hesitate to jump in and participate and ask questions. And we'll have good time for small group discussion and large group discussion more towards the second half of our hour. So I will tell you a little bit about me. I'm a civil rights attorney by training, and I've spent the past almost 30 years now, I'm 45, and I've spent 30 years of my life immersed in movements for social justice. I realized that litigating is a necessary strategy towards social change, and it was not the life I was meant to lead. And so I've really spent the bulk of my career post-lawyering in community-based organizations, working in social movements in a variety of roles and figuring out what it means to be a white person on this planet who knows that we are interconnected and that our fates are intertwined. So some identities that I hold that impact how I show up today and how you'll experience me are that I'm white, I'm a cisgender woman, I'm queer, I'm Jewish, I am 45, I'm a parent, and I'm a New Yorker. I'm so glad that I make my home on Dakota land and I'm here for good, but I grew up outside New York City. I spent my 20s in New York City. I bring a little bit of New York City with me. And I'm committed to the work of repair and reparation because I don't think there's any other way to look the people I love in the eye and tell them that they matter to me and that they're my friends, unless I am actively engaged in repairing the wounds that are hurting the people I most love. So I could say a lot about what I believe we are meant for on this planet together, but the work of reparations for me comes down to being in relationship with the people I love the most, and what it means to do that as an active practice, and what it means for me to live a life of more joy and more possibility and more connection. I experienced that through the work of repair and of reparation for the harms that people who carry my lineage have caused, and that we collectively have inherited and caused together. And I'm so grateful in this life that I get to do that work. And with that, I'll turn it to Jessica to say a few words of introduction and to say hello to us. Jessica, my amazing and fantastic and brilliant co-facilitator for this series.
Oh, thank you so much, Liz. I love hearing about your journey and what brings you here. And I am so excited to see all of you, not quite in person again, but on my screen again, and that we're able to engage in this work together. We know how important your time is and how meaningful your educational experiences are. And so we are really, truly honored that you have invited us into that journey. So thank you. My name is Jessica Intermill. I use she, her pronouns. I also join you from Dakota land, land ceded by the 1837 Treaty of Mendota. I am an attorney by training. I practiced federal Indian law for almost 20 years and spent most of that time as a treaty litigator, which means that I would go into federal courthouses and ask the United States to uphold its promises. Because that's what treaties are. They're an exchange of promises between nations. And it turns out our country has not been great at upholding them, so we're still asking federal courts to do that. What I learned in the course of that work is that there are other people outside of courtrooms who want to know that story, who want to know what those promises are and how we can keep them. And so I transitioned away from talking to guys in black robes and instead turned towards community and brought the skills that I learned as a treaty litigator, telling the story of land being commodified and turned into property, that story of colonization in living rooms and churches and boardrooms. And that very quickly turned to the next question of, so what do we do? Which is what brought me to Liz and to MNIPL and to you all. And we'll talk a bit more later on in the session about what the model is that we bring in to MNIPL in our work. But fundamentally, I was thinking as Liz was talking about her relationship to her beloveds, my type A, very J personality is like, yeah, I'm responsible to myself. And anyone who, it does not take much time with me to learn that I am very strict in adhering to what I believe is right. And if I cannot keep that for myself, I'm not any good to anyone. And so when I come to this work of reparations, I come as a Jewish white girl from Nebraska who knew what it was like to be accepted all the time, no matter what, until it was Christmas time. And then my friends would look at me like I had three heads and ask why I killed Jesus. And so I knew what it was like to be on the inside and to be on the outside. And legit, Liz, they did do that. Knowing what it is both to be on the inside and the outside taught me to look around every table I sit at and ask who is not there and who needs to be here and who needs to be brought in. And in this work of repair, my goal is to not have to bring anyone else, because we don't even need tables anymore when we're done, y'all. We all just do the things we do, and we do it together, and we don't need to do any more fixes because we all treat each other as the spiritual creatures we are. So that's me in a nutshell, Liz. I saw you put a chat prompt in. Thank you.
Put a chat prompt in, shocking to everyone. Yeah, feel free to start interacting in the chat and sharing something of yourself and what brings you here today. Jessica, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. I am going to lead us through some stuff, some introductory stuff So bear with me. I'm just going to do some talking. Again, let me know if you have questions. But I want to help orient all of us to what we're going to do over the next few months together. So let's talk about the format of this cycle of the Reparations Learning Lab. All of the information about dates, how to sign up, what we're going to be doing every month is on a website that, thank goodness, the amazing Sam Blackwell made for us, and I will put it in the chat. So if you're wondering, hey, when's the next Learning Lab? Is it going to be every month? How do I get the Zoom link? What do we do? Go look at this webpage. It is everything you need. All the links are live. It's all right there for you. And we will be holding a Reparations Learning Lab for an hour on Zoom every month for a while as we move around the Reparatory Eco Map together. And Jessica's going to talk more about the Reparatory Eco Map and what it means. But each Learning Lab session will ground itself in one of the areas of the Eco Map, knowing that they're all interconnected, but that they're lenses we can use to bring ourselves into the work. So today's theme is truth-telling. And in every Learning Lab, the way it's going to work is we'll do some intros. We'll talk a little bit about the theme from the Eco Map. We will send you into small groups to formulate questions together. So each small group will have the assignment of coming up with questions that you want to address with the entire group related to the theme in the Eco Map. And again, every week we'll give you an introduction to that, so you're not starting from scratch. And then we'll come back together out of small groups into a large group and move through as many of the workshopped questions you've developed as we can until we run out of time. And if there will always, I mean, we don't live in binaries. Nothing is ever fully finished or fully begun. We are always in process. So chances are, because we're observing time in the particular way we are, so that you can plan your days, and it's an arbitrary way to observe time, we'll mostly finish when we haven't finished with all of our questions and conversation. We will track that. We're going to send substantive recaps with resources, reflections. So there's multiple ways that we'll try to navigate the questions we raise together, not just in our live time together. And some of that will be in the recap. Oh, someone came into the waiting room, yay. And that will be how we do the labs. We come together, we ground ourselves, we go into small groups to come up with questions. We workshop those questions together. We say goodbye and wish each other well, and then there's a recap email. There's also a Reparations Google group listserv that we can use to continue conversations through email, to let each other know about events and opportunities, to talk about the actions we're taking. And Jessica will make sure, again, in the recap email, that you all have the information about how to join that and how to use it. Any questions about just those nuts and bolts before I move on? Amazing. So I wanted to take a minute to say, why is MNIPL, a climate justice organization, investing so significantly in reparations work? And the way that I think about it is, when we work together to repair the harm that climate change causes to our planet, we invite one another into deeper interdependence. And at MNIPL, we have learned again and again that if we are going to take climate repair seriously, we need to repair the harm caused to our Black and Indigenous relatives through stolen land, stolen labor, and stolen lives. The same systems that separate us from the earth, extraction, supremacy, profit, also separate us from each other. And so when we work towards repair, and reparations is one way to work towards repair, it's a specific way, we also work towards our own reconnection and towards a thriving and sustainable future. That's my best take on why I just feel like so many of us who do climate justice work know in our bones we can't do it without repair, and why reparations is one way towards the greater repair that we seek. And so in doing this work, we have a Black and Indigenous advisory table. We know that the work of reparation can't be done without intentional and meaningful relationships with Black and Indigenous people in our communities. At MNIPL, we make sure that Black and Indigenous allies are informing our reparations work at every stage, and really, really specifically that our Black and Indigenous partners consent to the reparations work. Nobody wants to be reparated upon. Like, there's already been so much theft of agency and sovereignty. It has to be in relationship. It has to be by consent. The process itself has to mirror the type of repair and reparations that we are striving towards. And so we have convened a formal Black and Native Reparations Advisory Table. It's a group of Black and Indigenous leaders who are part of our movement who have agreed to help shape and inform and support our reparations work. We meet with them every other month. They bring the insights of their experience and they challenge us to live this work more authentically. We stipend and pay the folks who are part of that table. People deserve to be compensated for their labor, especially when we are talking about reparations to Black and Native folks. And we really, really need your help to make that possible. There is no magic world where this is funded by a foundation. The work of reparations will always come from our hearts and from grassroots community. And so to make it possible to stipend the Black and Native Advisory Table, we're asking everyone who participates in this work who is able. The violence of capitalism messes with all of us. And I know we're all in very different positions around the resources we have access to. But if you are able, please make a contribution so that to the Black and Native Advisory Table so that we can keep investing in what that makes possible. And I think I put the right link in the chat, Jessica. I will let you correct me if I didn't. Ha ha ha. So last couple of things before we talk about the Repertory Eco Map and dive in substantively. We're already diving in substantively. There's a spectrum, not a difference. But as part of the warm-up, who are the reparations labs for? Jessica and I received a lot of questions before we started about, am I supposed to be part of this? Is it okay that I'm part of this? Are people of color a part of this? Who is meant to be part of this? And those are necessary questions. So in the way we imagined it for this cycle, and it could change in the future, it's been different in the past, these sessions are intended. So when we craft them, this is what we have in mind. These sessions are intended for white-bodied people from across different lineages, identities, traditions, and geographies who are committed to the work of repair and reparation and who want to continue to learn and grow and build community. We will focus on moving from ideas towards action, and we will focus on building personal, collective, and systemic reparations practices. Black folks, Indigenous people, Brown, Native folks, other folks of color are welcome to join. But when we're thinking about the audience, we're thinking about folks who experience whiteness, who live in a white body because of the particular role that whiteness has played in benefiting from and replicating the systems and structures of theft that undergird the need for reparations. So I imagine that each of you are here in some way because of your curiosity and your commitment. Because of that, we are not recording the conversation part of these sessions. We want it to be a more open space. We encourage you to watch and share the prior learning table recordings, which have a bunch of foundational concepts in learning that you can use. And we think about this as an intermediate space. It's not for somebody, well, it could be. I mean, like, we welcome you, but we haven't crafted it to be a space for people who are wondering what reparations is and have never heard of it before. Like, if that's where you are, please come, but that's not where we're starting and how we designed it. And it's also a space for folks who feel a commitment within themselves to this work. And so we have real asks and real expectations of you. Can somebody who is not me show the slide with the asks and expectations that we all look at them together? Oh, maybe we didn't prep that, which is just fine. That happens sometimes. I will say them. And Jessica, maybe you can scribe into the chat as I say it. So the first ask and expectation is that if you haven't already attended or watched the reparations, what are they? Learning table, the recording, that you do that. And that if you're here today and you haven't had some introduction to reparations, and you're noticing that you have a bunch of introductory questions, that you hold those for a moment until you've watched the intro recording, because some of those questions might be answered. I'm saying that in a slightly clumsy way, but can you sort of feel what I'm saying? We want this to be accessible to people across a broad range of places in a learning journey. And we want people to kind of have the foundation so we can start from there. And that's why we have this recording. It's not perfect, but it's a place to start. And so this is a time where if you haven't engaged with some foundational concepts, maybe hold your questions or talk to us after the session so that we can help catch you up, so that we're not repeating ourselves for folks who have been part of that work. Questions about that? All right, so that's expectation number one. Our second expectation and ask is that if you are able, you make a commitment that is meaningful to you to fund the Black and Native Advisory Table, so that you make a financial contribution to stipending and resourcing our Black and Native partners, part of reparations. And our ask and expectation number three is that you think about resourcing MNIPL generally to do this work. MNIPL is led by a board that is 90% Black and Native. We are one of the leading organizations in building a collaborative agenda for Native sovereignty and tribal sovereignty in the Minnesota legislature. We are so lucky to get to do this together, and we cannot do it without resources in the current system in which we live. So please, if you are able, become a sustaining donor of MNIPL with a monthly contribution of any amount that is meaningful and doable for you. That is how we are able to keep doing this together. That, my friends, is the spiel. I will hand it to Jessica to talk about the Repertory Eco Map. Thank you so much, everyone.
Talk about the Repertory Eco Map when I'm giggling about the spiel.
See.
It's too much.
As I talk with my hands, I've managed to throw my rings into space while I was talking. So excuse me as I find them. I like to, not lose my wedding ring while I'm on a webinar. So.
Okay. So glad we recorded that too. So when we talk about this work, we often talk about the Repertory Eco Map. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, though I am going to put it on screen share. I'm not going to talk about the whole thing as in this moment, because as we just talked about, you're going to have a chance to review the learning table, if you have not, that says, what is reparations? We go through this whole thing. But I wanted to revisit the just sort of main ideas. And that's, first of all, that there are 5 sort of sectors. Some people think of them as petals or areas, but 5 sectors of the Repertory Eco Map with reparations at the middle. So each of these 5 topics or sectors is necessary to reparations, but none is alone sufficient for reparations. So for example, I just saw that, someone in the chat, one of the things that's present for them today is that they're wondering how to engage in reparations when they're housing insecure, which is a tremendous, tremendous question. And when you look at this map, you can see that wealth return is just one of 5 different components of reparations. So it is possible to engage in any one of these to begin with. In fact, notice that there's no start and there's no end. Because of how this is structured, you can come into reparations at any of these points, at wealth return or at truth telling. And once you're in, there's no exit. You just keep doing the work, because when we are in the work of repairing generational harms, our work is generational. We don't get an end date. We don't get to say, checked it off the list. As we go through our learning labs, we'll structure each of the labs around a different sector. So we'll have 5 total labs and go through each one at a different theme for each one. When we talk about truth telling, I want to get into that just a little bit more specifically. What do we mean when we say truth telling? Because it really has 2 components. Especially for white-bodied folks, there are stories we need to hear and stories we need to tell. So for example, the experience of a person who is a person of color, who is Black or Indigenous especially, those are not my stories to tell. My stories that I need to tell are ones of my own ancestry and my own benefit from that ancestry and what it means to not have done the thing. So I don't need to be, for example, I don't need to feel ashamed and minimized or beholden to the decisions of some of my literal colonizer ancestors, right? We're talking Massachusetts Bay, we're talking New Amsterdam before it's New York. They made decisions that I think are pretty awful in the scope of humanity, but that doesn't mean I'm bad, right? That means I need to know what it was that happened and tell that truth. And then I need to hear the truth of what that meant to other people. What did it mean to the Lenape who lived on Manhattan Island before it was colonized? What did it mean to the Dakota who are here before the United States didn't just take their land, but also exiled them? And so it's that duality that we really dive into with truth telling. And in this space, one of the things to keep in mind is that all of those stories stack on top of each other. It is true right now that as a person who is coming to you through ones and zeros over the air and through micro cables that I have no understanding of whatsoever, I'm telling you about my ancestors, like my 12th great grandfather who cleared Lenape land. Both of those things are true now. And the experiences of other people are true. And so as we continue into our work today, I'm going to turn off that eco map, but we will have it available in the recap email afterward because we tend to refer back to it quite a bit. And at this point, let's go ahead and stop the recording.